In this episode, we're following the journey of one first-home buyer who has conquered the mountain. We're going to hear about the lessons she learned, whether her assumptions were right or wrong, the mistakes she made, and those that were avoided, and ultimately, how she sealed the deal.
Welcome to Your First Home Buyer Guide, the podcast for first home buyers who want to get it right.
I'm Megan and that was Veronica. We're both buyer's agents and probably old enough to be your mums. But that's a good thing because between us, we've got over 40 years experience and we are going to share with you bucket loads of stories about avoidable mistakes. Together, we're going to make sure that you get unbiased and real information that you can rely on so you can get where you want to be without missing a step.
Now, we've got loads of great tips for you in this episode, and if you'd like more useful tools, head over to the website homebuyeracademy.com.au. There you'll find free checklists that you can download, a free mini course on how to price a property, and our Where to Buy workshop for only $39. Priceless stuff, really.
Bargain. But before we get into the interesting stuff in this week's episode, here's the boring bit, the disclaimer. You, of course, know that nothing in this podcast is to be taken as personal advice. We always recommend getting the advice of an expert in their field of expertise. Now, we've done our very best to ensure that the content is correct at the time of recording, but things change. So check with the relevant government authority or your advisors to get the most up-to-date information.
We love hearing from our members who made it all the way to the summit and purchased their first home. And before we introduce Kristy, which I'll have to say is not her real name, she's being anonymous. Okay, so if you're watching the video, you'll see that Kristy looks like, well, basically a black screen with HBA graduate with a little smiley face on it. Okay. Before we introduce Kristy, Megan, tell us about your house of the week. It's a interesting little construction, this one, if you're watching the video.
Look at that. This is in Montreal in Canada, and it's actually I think it was an architect's thesis, but they ended up building it and people live in this. This is fascinating. It is a bunch of boxes. It almost looks like they've got a whole heap, but it's not just boxes on top of each other. For those that aren't watching, it is boxes that are placed in different angles over each other. And it looks like an engineering feat. I love it. It's amazing.
It's pretty cool. It does a bit look like a toddler's playroom. You know, they've just been playing with the blocks and threw them in the corner and walked away.
Any way that they could possibly stick them together.
They actually remind me a little bit of in Sydney Harbour, Cirrus. I think it's called Cirrus, which is a brutalist building, which is actually public housing for many years. And recently it's been redeveloped and now selling for ridiculous amounts of money because it's pretty incredible views. But it reminds me of that, a bunch of boxes basically all stacked on top of each other. Okay.
All right, Kristy, let's kick off.
Kristy is our HBA graduate, Home Buyer Academy graduate. We're so excited to be sharing her story today. Thank you for coming along.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Really excited to talk to you both after listening to your voices for so long.
It's great to meet you.
We get to listen this time and you get to talk.
Oh, no.
Let's start at the beginning. When did you first decide that you wanted to buy a property?
I mean, really, it's been a life goal, but I think I started dabbling at looking, like kicking the tires, as you kind of say, just before the pandemic. I think I was sort of starting to look at properties, and I had I knew nothing. So I know you've said a few times some other students in the program say that they do, step 7, 3, 5, 2, and like I'm also guilty of that. Like I think I was looking. My aim was to be in the city. Didn't really have any considerations on the asset. I think deep down I was thinking a stepping stone strategy, but didn't know what that was. I think that was just kind of my mentality. I went to a Big Four bank to see what I could get pre-approved for. Didn't talk to a broker. Like I just kind of did all of these tire kicking exercises and ambling about and didn't really know what I was doing, but also fairly overwhelmed by the fact that, I'm in Sydney and it's really hard here. And obviously not knowing what I didn't know, and also not really knowing much of anything at the start.
And you're buying as a single woman, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's amazing, actually. We've actually had quite a few single women in the course, and I think it's fantastic because, well, one, I think that women tend to reach out for help quicker, I think, than men. And I know I've interviewed quite a lot of men over the years who said, yeah, well, it took me much longer than my partner, if they're in a partnership, to come to the point where I realized I didn't actually know what I needed to know. And I shouldn't either, because I'm not an expert in this field. So well done on that.
Well done. And it's an empowering process too, to actually
absolutely
make that decision and then say, well, I'm going to bring in the people that can guide me the best, rather than trying to fumble my way through this, doing all the steps out of course.
Yeah.
And I like to research. So, I've always got that mindset of learning things when you don't know them, rather than just assuming.
And I know in our forum, so our members have access to a forum where they get to ask lots and lots of questions, and even the more personal questions, when you got to the point, we were jumping ahead here, where you got to send through details, which is in a private channel, if you like, about the actual property you're looking at. You ask amazing questions and great questions. And in fact, I think we've even created some of our podcast episodes from, that have started from some of the questions you've asked. Yeah. So really good questions.
They're not just questions that you have often. Yeah. Things that other people haven't even thought of.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, quite often it's like, oh, do I need to think about that? But let's go back to the actual beginning, because you said that you started really deciding that you're going to do this just at the beginning of the pandemic, but you must have been saving for a while, right? Because you have to have a deposit, right? So tell us about that.
So it was just like, okay, I'll start saving. Don't know what for. that was I want a deposit for a place. Well, how do you do that? I don't really know, but I'll just keep saving until I figure it out, or until I know what I want or what I'm looking for. It's the thing you do. So that was a little bit mindless, but it was a good thing to do, obviously, because it meant that once I got serious, I was pretty close to being ready in that regard. Of course, then there's forming the dream team and enrolling in the course and learning how things actually work and learning what the steps are. All of that actually made me ready.
So I guess it's, the beginning of the pandemic. So now we're recording this, in March 2022. So we're basically 2 years ago, you decided. So this process from when you said, right, I can get serious about it now. What sort of percentage are we talking about? Do you mind me asking about that in terms of the deposit? Like, did you have all your deposit saved up at that point? You said, I'm going to be serious now. I think I've got enough.
The thing, I didn't really have a clue, because I went, okay, the bank will tell me what I need, right? I laugh now because, I have a great mortgage broker and I know so much more. But then I'm like, the bank will tell me when I can borrow. So I went to the bank, and he gave me, and this is one of those nuggets of gold from the two of you, that don't ask the wrong person for the wrong advice, or don't take advice from the wrong person or the person who's not the field expert. Because this lender at a Big Four bank was saying, oh, you're a first home buyer, so you should buy within the grant range, and I will approve the amount that will allow you to buy within the grant range, and you should buy a house because that's what's valuable. And I'm like, which capital are you in? And he was not from Sydney, so he didn't know anything really about what it's like here. And so it was all of this sort of stuff. And I was like, yeah, all of this sounds wrong. Like I knew enough to know that, except for the part about the first homeowner grants and concessions. That originally was my aim to fall within that range, and I was by those standards pretty close.
That's really interesting, though, because I wonder, how hard is it to let go of that? Because I know it must feel like free money.
Free money.
Yeah, except that when you start looking at assets, and this is where learning what makes a good asset is so important, because when you start looking at the quality you get in that price range, there's so much crap. There's so much crap. Really bad.
And did you find that prices were a bit inflated because so many people were competing to try and keep within that price range?
Oh, I wondered about that, but no, the prices just kept going up and up. And so to sort of fill out the timeline, a bit before the pandemic was when I was starting to look at listings. Then once the pandemic hit, I went, well, I can't go and actually visit anywhere. So I need to do some research. And that's when I found the course. And that's when I enrolled and started learning things. And I thought, yeah, I wonder if people are going to be really competitive within the first home owner grant range. And all I could see once restrictions lifted and went back again, like in the lockdowns and reopenings and all of that, prices were just going up and up. Is all I saw, or at least flat. So I thought, to be a player in this game, I'm going to have to go further. It's just if I want to buy in this city, in this metropolitan area, I need to step up. And the grants, as you say, are really to stimulate things like building and development. They're not for us, which is a bit disheartening when you think about it. But
I think heart in the right place, but it certainly the restrictions that are placed on what you can do with those grants is very clearly about who they're trying to stimulate, and that's the construction industry at a time. How long did it take you to save up the deposit? Do you remember?
A fair few years.
Yeah. Long process.
It took several years. Yeah, quite a few years.
And you mentioned that you got some advice, and I'm using inverted commas with my fingers. What do you call them? Rabbit ears?
Big air quotes on that one.
Big air quotes on that. You got some advice
yes.
about what you should buy from one of the big four banks, and then realised, hang on, hold your horses. Who else was trying to give you advice at that in those early stages of you starting your process?
I think that I guess the other big factor is just what the media is doing at any given time. It can steer you one way or another. There's a lot of hysteria, and you've got to keep in mind that that's for clicks. There's a lot of clickbait about Sydney property in particular. So I didn't sort of go around asking for advice at that point. I just wanted to do my own research after that, because I thought this can't be right, or it might not be something I can achieve if I follow that advice from the bank and go with the bank's lending frame of reference. Because I guess the thing I've learnt since speaking to a mortgage broker is the big four are really stingy. And those are his exact words. He's like, they're so stingy. So, a good mortgage broker worth their weight in gold.
That's hilarious. I know that I've been doing some research, because every year for the Elephant in the Room podcast, we put together a full forecast report. And this particular year, and I guess we released it on April Fool's Day, of course. And this particular year, we're doing a bank scorecard. And honestly, they just get it wrong, and they would get it right. I don't know. I actually got to calculate this, but we're talking about 10% of the time, and it's all those headlines.
When you say wrong or right, what are you referring to?
Their forecasts. Sorry,
their forecasts.
Yeah, and that's what makes a lot of the headlines. Here's a classic one. There's a Westpac headline. I saw this headline in a number of different places, and it was like they predict 14% fall in property prices, right? Their forecast at that point was for a 2% increase in the rest of 2021, a 7% fall, I think, in 2022, and a 5% fall in 2023. Now, when you add those up, now you could be clever and compound them, but even if you just add them up, the 2% plus the 5% plus the 7% equals 14%, but it's actually +2 -5 -7. And someone has got no maths ability and has just added the three figures together and came up with 14%. And that's the headline. I had to go through it, honestly, with a fine-tooth comb. And I went back to Kristy, who's my co-host on that podcast. I went, can you check my working out here? Because someone's got it wrong. And the headlines ran and ran and ran, 14% fall. And it's actually an incorrect calculation of basically what their forecast is anyway. And the forecast will be wrong because if you go back to their track records, they're always wrong. Well, they're nine times out of 10. So I love the fact that you said, I'm just going to steer clear of the media hysteria. But you must be a rare critical thinker. Most people get carried away on this wave.
Yeah.
Why do you think differently?
I don't know how to answer that. I just, I don't know. I'm curious. I'm just very curious about a lot of things. And I like to research and I like to hear what experts have to say. And also I found that, a lot of articles on various media sites or real estate sites were pretty thin. Anyway, they're light on detail and I like detail. So, that's why I kind of looked beyond.
Got it.
Yeah.
Now, when did you actually sign up for the course exactly? I can't remember.
It was in lockdown, like the first lockdown.
Oh, right.
I'm like, I can't do anything.
Like
so study time, this is the time to kind of get stuck in.
And we did have a big uplift in new members at that time, I remember, because they couldn't go and do the physical stuff. So they needed to just engage the brain, which was incredibly valuable, that when you could go out there and do the physical stuff, you were very well armed.
Yeah, that's right.
Particularly our Victorian
for sure
students,
lockdown champions.
So hard for them.
They couldn't see anything. They could do nothing. I was so remember the early days of the beta group, Megan. We were doing our little weekly Saturday catch ups with them. All comparing lockdown stories, but anyway, many of them are
guilty.
bored.
I remember being out at lunch and then going home to do one of those, and the guilt that I felt that I'd been out of the house, basically
in the sun as well. Anyway,
sunny too. Yeah,
we digress. So you signed up for the course in the middle of lockdown, and so I guess what did you find? What were the first revelations that you had when you started doing it?
What makes a good asset and thinking about it as an asset, not just as just basing your decision on an emotional reaction to a place, but thinking of it as an asset was a big thing. And then just the process of everything. I think one of the most valuable things overall was knowing how it works and knowing how, counterintuitive a lot of the process is, to the point where so much of it doesn't feel consumer friendly at all. It's almost like you've got more rights as a consumer if you buy a fridge than if you buy a property, which is pretty wild.
It's wild.
And I think you do.
And some people do more research on the fridge than they do on a property.
Yes. And so all of that was a revelation. And I think, the really valuable part for me was, if I hadn't known that this is actually how it works, I might have just never done it. I might never have gone through with it, because I would have been, this is a scam. I'm not doing this. I've got no rights. What? I'm waiving a cooling off period? Why would I do that? Like that would be my mindset naturally. But knowing that you've got to, those are the rules of engagement. And if you want to play the game, that's what you've got to, it's what you've got to do. It's, it was really important for me.
Yeah. You can't fight the process, and you can't alter it. You've got to understand it and work within it.
Yeah. You've got to accept it. You've got to see it as it is and decide, am I going to play or am I going to opt out? And I wanted to play the game. So that I did, but I learned how it worked.
Right.
I researched in depth.
Tell us about the search process itself. Yeah, did you find that you changed locations? So you talked about, initially you got the advice about new and went, no, that's not working for me. But what about location?
Yeah, so looking at the city and realising that in my price range, I wasn't going to get what I believed to be a good asset, I started to kind of zoom out, like literally on the map, zoom out and look at the various price points that I was looking at, and seeing how close I could get to the city in an area that I liked, but where I could get something that was a decent asset. So that was part of it. And then the next step was the Excel spreadsheet and being extremely nerdy about tracking sales in the area that I'd landed on.
Yep.
And I've even I separated it out so that, because I was looking at units, so I separated it out by unit number and the street number, so I could sort it by street number and to see what other sales had gone on in the same building. So I did it in that granular way.
Oh, you are a spreadsheet queen.
Yeah, I just very nerdy, but it was really helpful because when something came up, I'm like, that address sounds familiar. I could actually see if there were recent sales in that building. And also it helped me kind of keep track. If I visited somewhere, I had my notes on the building as well as the unit, because there were some buildings that I really didn't like for various reasons. And so it was good to kind of keep track of all of that information.
Great.
So
love it.
Now,
for those who haven't done the course, the spreadsheet that is being referred to there is a big part of the search process, and also helps with recalibrating in step 4, module 4, I think it is, revise and correct.
That's module 5, but anyway.
So I'm a different location recording today. I haven't got the run
reminder down the side of my wall here.
Don't do module 5 at module 7.
Don't get it in the wrong order.
Get it in the right order.
Do it in the right order.
But it is an incredibly good way of tracking what you've seen, prices, changes in the marketplace, and so forth. And that's what we're talking about there with spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's really important. Did you find, though, that the type of property you ended up buying or you ended up looking for was different to what you started looking at? I mean, did you actually always look at apartments despite what that bank person said, or did you find that you were looking for something entirely different originally?
There'd been enough bad press about new buildings that I very quickly ruled out anything less than 20 or 30 years old. So I ended up looking at that sort of classic Sydney thing of the 3-floor walk up built in the 60s, 70s and 80s. It sounds like a greatest hits radio station. But yeah, I looked at those properties, and I also only compared those properties because in the area I was looking at there, and I guess it's typical of many Sydney areas, there are lots of those newer ones that all kind of look the same. Cookie cutter, I've heard you refer to on the show and in the course. There's lots of those, and they just tend to be a different price point, different kind of asset. I did occasionally look at them, and every time I was like, I really hate these. So yeah, once I'd kind of landed on older building, the area and the size, I kind of stuck to that, and there was enough to compare and contrast within that bracket.
So how did you ultimately, how did you know that you'd found the one when you found the one?
Yeah. So I had boxes that, you have your wish list and then what you're willing to compromise on. And the thing I found with most what I was looking at, they just weren't ticking most of the fundamental boxes by my standard. And every now and then I'm like, am I being too fussy? No, I don't think I am. But it was things like, what I wanted was top floor, north facing balcony, lots of natural light, two bedroom, decent floor plan, internal laundry preferably, lock up garage preferably. Like those were the things I was looking for. And so many places are like ground floor, no natural light. It's bigger, but there's still no natural light. Or you could climb in this balcony. Do not want that. Doesn't feel secure. There was one place I saw had a courtyard. I'm like, oh, that's nice. I wonder if it's on title. Wasn't on title. Still went for a crazy amount because they timed that one right after lockdown, one of the lockdowns.
People wanted space.
Yeah, they wanted space. It's like, but it's not on title, y'all. And that was another thing that I just knew nothing about before I did the course, but like always checking what is on title, what is not on title. So yeah, I mean, I did look at a lot of places that just, and then don't buy on a main road like that other one. So there'd be ones that would be top floor but on a main road, or north facing but second floor, or there's always that. And I'm like, those are the things I'm not really willing to compromise on. And I know, that process of becoming an area expert, I knew that the type of unit I wanted existed in reality. Mm-hmm. I just needed it to come on the market. Yes. So when it did, quiet street, 2-bedroom, north facing, decent size, decent floor plan, internal laundry, lock-up garage, all of that kind of stuff. When that came on the market, I'm like, okay,
I knew that was the one to push for.
Yeah, and I'm probably going to have to move quite quickly.
Yeah.
Was it private treaty or an auction?
Before we get to that, I think what's so interesting here is that, because when you look at units, and we're not talking about brand new or cookie cutter stuff, but even if you're looking at this older style, the 1950s, 60s, 70s type blocks, often these suburbs have quite a few of these blocks in them, and they might all have 9 or 12 apartments in each block, right? But even then, getting the north facing on the top floor with the good floor plan, not on a main road, with the garage and the internal laundry, that makes it scarce. They're the scarce things. So you can see how many crappy ones that don't quite have all the raw ingredients right. And so that's what because we were always harping on about scarcity.
Yeah. So owner-occupier appeal and scarcity.
Yeah. So even within a type of property where there are more of them than houses, and where there's lots of similarities, you might look at a whole bunch of buildings and go, oh, they're all the same. No, they're not. And, you've discovered that. So then you pounced. Okay, so over to Megan's question.
Did I ask? Oh, did you buy by auction, auction or private treaty? So was it negotiated or?
So this is where it gets interesting. But I just wanted to touch on scarcity, because that was something that I guess everywhere I visited, I could hear the two of you. I could hear the two of you advising me. Yeah, is it scarce?
I hope that was pleasant.
It's come dime a dozen. Beware of lipstick on a pig, and that's something I saw so much, that there were places that were clearly nicely renovated, but if you look closely, quite hurriedly renovated, and on ground floor overlooking a power station or on a main road or like whatever. And so I kind of had to, steel myself to maintain the standard, right? And am I being fussy?
Stay strong.
Yes. Yeah. Am I being fussy, or am I looking for scarcity? And I knew that it existed, and it was just
that's the key point. Yes. You weren't looking for something that you didn't know. No, you weren't looking for something that didn't exist. You actually had worked out that, if that came up, that met the brief and it was in my budget. So that's a really, really important point, because you're not looking for a unicorn. You have to stop. Yes. People have to stop the idealising of I'm going to get this in this suburb in this price range if it has never existed in very recent history. Yeah. So I think that's a really, really important thing, because scarcity is vital to asset selection, but you can go too far and never end up buying because it doesn't exist.
Yeah. It's such a good point. And I remember one of your posts in the forum there, Kristy, and my daughter had just had this conversation with me about her food choices, right? She's 15. And she'd said, I'm not fussy, I'm just particular. And I just, one of your questions was around that. Am I looking for something that doesn't exist? What should I give up on? And that's when I went back to you and said, I just think that I'm not fussy, I'm particular. And it does come, it works perfectly in
discerning.
Yeah, discerning. That's it. It works perfectly in this situation, because that's exactly true. That, you can go, I'm going to stick to my guns and I'm not going to compromise on anything. But you're not looking. If you're looking for a unicorn, then you can, you still be looking in 10 years' time. Yeah. So it's
one of the first questions in buyer's agency we ask, isn't it? If someone's been looking for 2 years, you say, have you seen anything that you would have bought that was inside your budget? And if the answer is no, then they are unicorn hunting.
Dear. Heaps
recalibration required.
Yeah, unless, I guess the thing is, I kind of hadn't seen what I was looking for, but I knew it existed. It just hadn't been available to buy.
Yeah.
But
So the negotiation.
Yes. Okay.
What was involved?
So this was going to auction. This property was going to auction. So I was reading the final chapters of Auction Ready and kind of going, okay, I might have to put on a bit of a persona to do this. You know, what was it? Charming and unpredictable was the persona to adopt there.
Yeah.
So I was kind of psyching myself up for that, but I made sure I expressed interest early and was kept in the loop. And at that very first inspection, there were competitive vibes there already and posturing from one of the alphas. there was this guy talking, he was asking, where's the agent? Because it was only the assistant there that day. It wasn't the principal agent. And so where is he? Oh, I want to talk to him. And and they're like,
wow.
Here. And then the equally alpha partner swooped in and said, oh, well, I started giving the property history. Like they were both posturing really loudly so that all the rest of us might be intimidated. I'm like, okay, cool, power play. It's fun.
But you saw right through it.
Well, I was like, in the end, it's whoever wins the bid. So let's just take it one step at a time, I guess. But there were lots of people inquiring. Like you could see there was interest.
Yeah.
But I will say there was a compromise pretty evident that it needs a bit of work. Like it is a bit tired. And I had no intention of wanting a fixer-upper or renovations at all. But that's the compromise I ended up making because you can't make extra natural light, you can't make north facing asset, you can't all of that sort of stuff, but you can cover a popcorn ceiling and replace carpet. So that's kind of where I went with that in terms of compromise. But so it was set to go to auction. I expressed interest early and asked if people were making, or they were accepting, if the vendor was accepting offers. They said not at this stage, but possibly the weekend before auction, we will discuss with the vendor whether we might accept offers. There's a lot of that really fumbling, lengthy language they use, like to kind of, I don't know whether it's deliberate but it sort of makes you feel a little bit off balance. We're looking to communicate and discuss whether we might look at maybe accepting offers, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there was quite a lot of that. In the meantime, I'm like, right, due diligence, talk to, get the contract, send it to the conveyancer, who was an absolute legend, by the way, absolutely brilliant lawyer, does all of the things like the strata, property law and conveyancing. So
fabulous.
Really good advice, answered lots of questions, also knew about the course, by the way. So
excellent.
So
did we recommend that person, or that you found that person yourself?
I found her via web search and just glowing reviews from people that seemed like real reviews, not click farm reviews, real ones.
I will have to get you to share her details with us then.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
It's always good to have good people on the team.
Yeah. I thought, even if I don't go all the way through this, stepping through due diligence is a really good exercise in a real world situation. I sent the contract to her. I kept the mortgage broker updated, got the strata report, and it was great that my solicitor reviewed the strata report as well as the contract.
Great.
And wrote really good summaries and answered all my questions. And I like to ask questions. So so we sort of did all of that due diligence, and so I was kind of making moves to be ready, whatever the case was, pre-auction conditions or auction conditions. It's kind of the same thing. So that was that first part.
Great.
Well done.
So I'm hearing that it didn't make it to auction.
No, so then they started taking. I'm just trying to think of the order. So they they started being interested in taking offers, I guess. It was sort of the next step. And the assistants kind of asked me for and this is something you get quite a bit. They ask you for your price feedback. And I made it kind of a policy that I would either just agree with whatever their price guide was. I'd say, oh, your price range of blah to blah is about right, would be what I'd say.
That's what they deserve, by the way.
Yeah, so I would just kind of massage their ego, I guess, and just say, oh, yeah, I think you pitched it about right. Or I'd say, oh, I'm not really sure. I'm still researching, which is what I did in this scenario, because I thought until you're formally taking offers, I'm not going to say a number.
Nice.
So they set I got a call from the agent. He said, we're going to start taking offers now. I'm like, okay, cool. I said, what are your rules of engagement? He's like, oh, I'm taking them in writing. I'm like that. Okay, that's good to know. I spoke to the solicitor. She gave me exact wording to use when making the offer. So I made the offer via email within the range that the agent set. And then I played a waiting game for a few days and heard back from the agent that there was a higher offer and then a counter to that higher offer. So there were 3 of us bidding on it. And then there was another, like a 4th offer coming from the person who made the 2nd offer. So it was kind of all this sort of stuff going on. And he says, so now if this were an auction, I would say, this is what the agent said, I would say this is on the market now. Like this is, so I'm thinking,
reached the price that they would sell at.
Yeah. So it's, in my mind, it's basically a slow moving auction now. Is how I was viewing it. And
a bit blind too, because of course you've got to then believe the agent in what they say to you.
Yes.
But it is a really good question, because we do say, often I talk about it in my business, it's like the tripwire, that the agents are trying to get it to a point where they go, okay, we now know it's going to sell, and then all of a sudden the dial turns up and you go, bang, this is on for good. It's a bit like in an auction where it's over reserved. So what happened once it was at that point?
So the second bidder counted the third bidder, and the agent said, I've advised that second bidder to make an offer, a really healthy offer over and above that third bidder. And I'm thinking, oh God, where is this going to go? Where is this going to go?
So was he giving you prices at that point in time?
Or he was
giving you the actual numbers.
Giving me the actual numbers.
We have a Dutch auction going on now.
Is that what that is?
Do you know, just as an aside, we call it a Dutch auction. Everyone calls it a Dutch auction. Do you know what a Dutch auction really is, though?
No, I've never actually looked it up.
Yeah, at the fish markets they do this. It's basically, it actually starts at a high price and the price starts falling. And it's like, well, everyone has to hold their nerve, and then whoever wants to buy the I don't know, is it a crate of fish?
Going down.
It goes down, and they've got to jump in because they just think, oh my God, if someone else gets this price, it's really good value. So it's actually the opposite to what actually happens. But we all call it.
Introduce that to the real estate industry.
I don't. But it's not even correct. We all use the term incorrectly. And I just learnt this, and I was like, oh, we all say this all the time.
We all learn something from this podcast. Everybody learns something, including me.
Anyway, sorry, back to your we'll call it a Dutch auction because that's what people in the industry call it. But so you've got this auction going around behind closed doors, effectively on the end of a telephone.
Yes, and this is the part that it's a bit uncomfortable, because you kind of don't really have a choice in that you've either got to believe them or opt out, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's pretty uncomfortable to fly blind like that. But
it is.
But that's the way it's going to go. And so he'd advised the second bidder to bid well over and above the third bidder, and it turned out that second bidder did not do that. They just offered just slightly more than the second bidder. He's like, well, he didn't follow my advice, and he only offered X amount over. It's like, so that's over to you. Are you still in? And I said, yeah, I'm not bowing out yet. I'll get back to you. And then I thought, okay, so if this were a live auction, this might be where I'd want to, match or maybe slow the pace of this slightly. So in an increment even lower than the second bidder outbidding the third, I outbidded that bid. Oh, it's getting confusing now, but basically the unit that had went up
smaller amount.
I offered a smaller amount extra.
And that was enough, or I
waited
another round.
Waited, and then I got a text saying, "Is that your best and final?" And I was like,
"Oh, I know, that's a hard one."
Oh my god! What do I do? And so I waited a moment, and I waited about I don't know 10, 15 minutes, and then the phone rang, and it was the agent. I thought, "Oh my god." But I sort of thought, well, if he's asking for a number, I'm still only ever going to put it in writing. I'm not going to say anything on the spot because I'll probably just too nerve-wracking. So when the phone rang, he's like, I said, I'm sorry, I haven't got back to you yet, but I will. He's like, I can make it really easy for you. The bidder just below yours wants time to think about it. If you can move today, it's yours. And I'm like, I can move today. Let's go. I didn't say that right then, but I that's how it went. I could move today. And so
congratulations. So slowing the pace was very well played.
Yeah, it was scary. It's really scary. And there's part of you that always thinks, did I get played? And the answer is obviously yes. Obviously I got played because you do. You can't kid a kidder and they know more than you. So it comes back to how does this fit with the price tracking that you've done over the course of like whatever period? And it really did fit in that price scheme that I had and what my initial impression was and the scarcity of that collection of attributes and all of that. It really worked out well, I think.
Yeah. I think the only time you'll ever know what is happening with any other buyer is in a public auction. That's the only time you'll ever know. The rest of it, you just have to say, I am comfortable with what I paid.
Yeah. And it's that research that you've done in the spreadsheet that we talk about, and that's where it comes into its own because you've got that evidence there. But, it's funny, I heard a story the other day from an agent who said to me, I had this messiest exchange of contracts. I said, what made it messy? He said, well, the person that actually ended up pushing up everybody else and the highest bidder. I mean, it was a pre-auction negotiation like that at the end of the telephone. But he said that when it came down to the crunch, they said they could sign a contract, but they didn't have their 66W. Now, that is in New South Wales. In order to sign a contract under auction conditions, you need a 66W certificate from your lawyer or conveyancer. So you actually can't sign a pre-auction offer without it because no agent is going to accept an offer prior to auction if it's not, if they've got to give you a cooling off period, right? And so that got messy because that actual person that had been competing and said, yeah, I can do it, didn't actually understand and actually wasn't ready. And so he almost had egg on his face with his vendor and, if the other person didn't go up any higher, he would have had the highest bidder actually unable to do what they said they could do. So it's funny because I had a bit of a chuckle with him because, of course, everybody hates agents. But sometimes agents have very good reasons for hating buyers. And, and in your case, Kristy, that you actually were ready. And so that's actually what clinched the deal for you. It got to a point where that was more important than the price by the sounds of it.
The preparation, the due diligence, the confidence, and, being able to match the pace. I think all of that kind of came together really well.
Gorgeous. Very proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Anytime we get an email from one of our members that says, I've done it, it's like fist pumps and high fives and it's like a proud parent.
Oh, that's awesome. And I mean, I've got to thank you both so much for just all of the resources you've created And the podcast, the course, all of the online downloadables, all of that stuff has just been so invaluable, and it really gave me the confidence to move forward. So yeah, huge props to you both.
Well, we are thrilled, and that's why we do it. I do have a question for you, which is slightly salesy, and we do try not to be too salesy on this. I mean, we like to make it clear that we, obviously have a course for people to buy, all the rest of it. But I've just been surveying a bunch of people that have done various bits and pieces. They've done the free course or they've done one of the workshops, but haven't actually done the full course. And, quite a lot of people came back saying, oh, well, I listened to the podcast, so I knew what to do. Can you illustrate what's the difference between listening to us rabbit on the podcast and doing the course?
It's a few things. I think the structure is really important, and getting the steps in the right order. Podcasts by nature jump around on topics depending on what might be timely, or you have a student purchase a house, and so or unit or whatever. So that it's a product of timeliness. Whereas the course sets out the structure of what you need to do, when you need to do it, what order you need to do it in, and it's in units as well. It's broken up and organized, and has actual visual resources as well that you can download, different worksheets and that kind of thing, spreadsheets and worksheets. So I think the structure is actually really important, because if you do everything in the wrong order, you can end up caught out not being prepared at the pointy end of proceedings.
And your story is a fantastic example about the preparation. I love, we get little dribs and drabs along the way, and you ask certain questions about certain aspects of the negotiation, certain aspects of the preparation and all the rest of it. But I had no idea that that's actually how the negotiation came to a head. So that's fantastic.
That's great. Great.
So our final question for you: what is your one piece of advice for first home buyers who are still climbing the mountain?
It's so nerdy, but do your research. And that counts towards your choice of property and the area that you're looking in, but also your dream team. Picking the right people, asking the right questions, collecting all of that information, because that research will matter all the way through the process and even afterwards. Because the thing that I didn't know to expect afterwards is just the roller coaster of emotions after you sign on the dotted line and give your deposit. It's really, really nerve-wracking. That feeling a little bit of being played is just par for the course. And so you go back to your research and go, no, actually, I've made the right decision because I have this data to support it.
Lovely.
So, it's really important.
So true. The roller coaster of emotions after the purchase can be, it sometimes called buyer's remorse, and sometimes, looking for other people to confirm an input. And you did this in quite a siloed way by choice. You actually just wanted to have the experts in their fields advising you, rather than having too much noise of family or friends having any kind of input. And I really admire that, because you can be put off track by people who don't understand your circumstances and don't understand what it is that you're trying to achieve and what you've done and how you've got to where you are. So I think the way that you did that is really quite admirable, because it allowed you to have your own headspace around that without having input from other people who didn't understand.
Yeah, it
or have their own biases.
It gives you space to be methodical and not be too emotional, but emotions are always going to be part of it, and you just kind of have to accept it. And ambiguity is always going to be part of it, and you just got to accept that as well. So as much noise that you can cut out as possible in this very noisy world is valuable, I think.
Well,
beautiful.
Well done. We appreciate you coming to share that with us.
Love your journey.
Yeah, it's a great journey. And I think, those extra challenges of doing it on your own, doing it in Australia's hottest market at the hottest time, I absolutely take my hat off to you for not sort of getting caught up in the frenzy and actually doing it in a way that means that, yes, you have those normal emotions.
Mm-hmm.
One of my team bought a house the other day, right? Now, she's bought many houses. She's experienced as I am. She's got over 20 years real estate experience, bought and sold houses, for clients over the years. Did it herself, has exactly the same post-purchase dissonance is the technical term for it. And we did the same thing. We stepped through all the information and all the research and all the knowledge that was gained and used in the actual ultimate decision. And that's the best thing to do. And then you can start feeling excited when that fades away.
Passes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing your journey with us.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
In this episode, we've covered a very small part of our 10-step online course for first-time buyers. If you would like to learn more about the process and how to buy without making a mistake, then head over to our website, www.homebuyeracademy.com.au. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss an episode. And if you like what you've heard today, please give us an iTunes review. 5 stars would be wonderful. It will help others find us as well.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you found this really useful. And if you have, please share the love with others who are in the same boat. We'll be back next week with some more priceless stuff.